On today's show, here is a Cavs-centric guide to the just started 2023 FIBA World Cup, and could one of Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, or Darius Garland, or maybe more than one, make 2024 Olympic team in Paris? We'll talk about all of that on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I'm Chris Manning, going solo today here on Monday, August 28th. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend and hope you did something good for yourself. Hope you did something nice. Hope you did something fun and relaxing. Hope you just aren't taking life too seriously, if I'm being honest. Life ain't gotta have a positive attitude out here, I think. So optimism, joy, all those things I think are good energy to bring into this Monday. I'm going to at least try to bring some energy and some joy to the 30 minutes of this podcast you're about to listen to. All about FIBA and international basketball today. Segment 1 is going to be about how I think it's a real bummer that there's no Cav to discuss and talk about actually at the FIBA World Cup. We'll talk about that. Segment 2, the Team USA outlooks for Donovan Mitchell, for Evan Mobley, for Darius Garland. All of them, I don't think locks, but we'll talk about them. And then it's okay. There's no Cav to follow, to root for at the 2023 FIBA World Cup. So who do you root for? Obviously we have a lot of American listeners. You're probably rooting for the American national team. Maybe you aren't, though. So maybe you have some other interests, or there's some interesting things you could look at, just if you wanted to be a basketball nerd about this. But to start with the fact that there are no Cavs. There are two people I want to start with, one of whom is still a Cav, one of whom is not, who were supposed to play at this tournament that I feel very sad for. First, obviously, is Ricky Rubio. We talked about this on the show. It's been very out there. I really feel for Ricky to not be there for Spain. If you know about him, you know what matters to him and what his kind of career and all of this is. I think this is something that really matters to him. I think this is something that really matters to him as far as his outlook on life, what he's about, everything he has going on. It's for him not to be there, I think, again, tells you how serious this ongoing battle and struggle he has with his mental health is. And I think, secondly, it's tough for Spain. I mean, from a basketball standpoint, this is really getting towards the end of an era. I know they have an upcoming generation, but they're already kind of past like a Saul Brothers era, and you're into a different version of what that team is. And Ricky was a big part of that. And we will see where it goes for him. We will see how this progresses. We'll see, how this all goes. But it's a bummer not to see him there because you know how much it means to him in a basketball sense. And also Howell Neto, who was with the Cavs last year, who's going to play overseas now, did get hurt already at the FIBA World Cup, and he is going to be done. I don't know if we know the exact severity of the injury yet. We will see, but he's done. He got hurt. He's again going to be overseas. He's not going to be in the NBA anymore, but this is someone that was really respected, I think, within the locker room. Had some real big fans on the coaching staff. A solid consummate pro, and he got hurt. And that you never want to see guys get hurt ever. It's just particularly, I think, a bummer at times to see someone like Howell get hurt playing international, playing for Brazil. You just never want to see a guy go down like that, and it didn't look good. And best wishes to him. There is still some Cavs connections out there in various different ways. Turkey's not there, so you don't even have like the Jetty Osman part of it. You do have Jordan Clarkson for the Philippines, which is really cool. I know it sounds random to say Jordan Clarkson played for the Philippines if you weren't aware. It's not quite as I ran him as like Kyle Anderson playing for China, which just felt funny. Just felt kind of random. Or like I didn't know this until recently, but Eric Gordon's mother is from the Bahamas, and he played for the Bahamas and just won a bunch of games in Argentina, and it caused former NBA player Andres Nocioni to get really mad on Twitter or X or whatever it's called about Eric Gordon playing for the Bahamas. So like there's always a little bit of intrigue there. But you have Clarkson. The reception, we'll talk about more of this later, is just been awesome for these Asian countries in Asia where this is taking place. Like, it is crazy. Even the USA game, they were playing New Zealand in their first game, and that was like a much more partisan crowd for New Zealand. Obviously, a much shorter flight to get from New Zealand to, I think, Indonesia, where that game was being played, versus like Americans going over there. And it's really cool. That whole environment for someone like Clarkson, it's cool to see him in this situation and see how he's like really blossomed as a pro and a professional. And he's a really big part of that Filipino national team. So that is just kind of cool to see how he's evolved and done all that. Larry Markkanen, another former Cav playing for the Jazz, is obviously a big deal for Finland. You have just like, he has really blossomed, and it was FIBA last year, post that trade or before the trade, and then kind of gearing up for the trade, where he really started to kind of break out and have this resurgence forward. And it's cool to see him in that environment. And one who he doesn't have a particularly long history with the Cavs, nor do I think he enjoyed his time in Cleveland very much. Did enjoy his time with the organization very much. It's like half a season, but Luol Deng. One of the coolest stories about the FIBA World Cup this year is that South Sudan, the youngest country in the world, qualified. Luol Deng is the general manager for the South Sudan national team. They have a 16-year-old who's a very, very high-end 2025 world draft prospect, is going to be the third youngest player at the World Cup. He has really been a big part of this getting off the ground. And this is someone that has like a basketball legacy to help launch this in Africa. They went 11-1 in qualifying for the World Cup, the best record by an African team. They're the first team ever to make the World Cup on their first try. Like, he had this quote in an interview he gave where he said like they don't have an indoor court, and like they're the first team ever to make it without an indoor court. Deng obviously has a very deep history. You can go read a ton about it, read his Wikipedia page at the very least. But he had really a deep connection in a way to make this better, and he's been a big part of this. I don't know like how good this team will be or what kind of chances they have of making an upset, but this is historic. I mean, they could make the Olympics. South Sudan could make the Olympics. They're on this big stage, really exceeding like this for the first time. That in itself is very cool, and I understand that I'm like really stretching here to connect Luol Deng and the Cavs. He spent half a year, and again, I don't think he liked his time very much. When you think of him in his NBA career, you don't think of him as a Cavalier. You think of him as a member of the Chicago Bulls, I think, more than anything else. But this is a really cool story. I recommend going and reading it. You can find the interview Deng gave in the Olympics official website. It's like in a podcast interview. It's just, this is something that international basketball gives you that the NBA just does not. And I think it's worth shutting out. So there are Cavs. The Rubio would have been someone we would have covered in detail had he played. Hopefully for him, he's all right and everything, and is at least watching from afar and everything. But and a bummer about Neto, but there is still some Cavs DNA sprinkled in there, even if it is not, Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland or Evan Mobley, who we're going to talk about next, shining for Team USA. All right, coming up next, though, Olympic futures for the Cavs' best three players. We'll discuss. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and football season is about to kick off. We're almost there. And FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team, literally any team, to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. So, for instance, let's say you're bullish on the Browns. You're a diehard Cleveland fan. The Browns are plus 3,000 at FanDuel right now to win the Super Bowl. Let's say they win 11 games, and it's going to net you 11 bonus bets at FanDuel. You could use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You could do some of them on NBA bets and have fun with that when that comes up if you really want to. And you could also just bet on the Chiefs and rack up some bonus bets that way because they're probably going to win a lot of games. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start today. Remember, make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Chris Manning back here solo today on this episode of Locked On Cavaliers. Team USA 2024 Olympic roster that's going to be in Paris. Team USA obviously will have expectations and probably be the betting favorite and the odds and everyone's favorite to win gold. They'll bring a deep collection of players, but that'll be a really competitive tournament. I mean, Jokic will play in that. Giannis will play in that for Greece. Luka, if they can make it, we'll talk about Slovenia a little bit in segment 3. If they make it, okay, Luka's there as well. Like there's a lot. The Rubio could be there for Spain as they have some of their younger players develop and really surge forward in that way. Rubio, if he's healthy and good to go and mentally everything's all right with him and he continues his career, he's going to be there for Spain. That's a lock. There's not anyone else that I would look at right now and say, they're like, I don't think Jared Allen is going to be a Team USA player. If they wanted to, they have Jaren Jackson, Joel Embiid might pick Team USA. So it's really about Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley. Let's start with Donovan Mitchell. He will be in his proverbial prime, 27 at the Olympics next summer. So you could look at this and say, okay, he's in his prime. This is a scorer. This is a guy that has played for Team USA before. Let's bring him. But it's also at a really loaded spot at 2 guard. I think you could see a world where he's easily the third choice shooting guard behind Devin Booker from the Suns, who I think is the best 2 guard in the league, and Anthony Edwards, who is there this summer playing for Team USA, and Mitchell could be the third choice behind those guys. I think what separates him from those guys, I think Booker's a better creator. I think Booker has proven to be a better passer, and I think in a Steve Kerr coach team, I think that will lean Booker's way. Certainly injuries could factor in this and open the door, but I think if everyone's healthy, I would give Booker the edge. Edwards is younger, a little more. He's Anthony Edwards. This is one of the most explosive players we have, as explosive as Mitchell is. And I think his creation could exceed Mitchell's. And if he has a big year this summer and he played for them, maybe he gets a bonus for being in-house. I also, we don't know if Mitchell or any of these guys, wants to play for Team USA, but I think he should be at least in the conversation. I think he has a chance to make the roster. I remember he was at the World Cup in 2019. He had 29 in the game against France where USA was bounced, but he didn't score in the 4th of that game for whatever that is worth. I think, again, he has a chance. He has played for Team USA before when he was a little bit younger. If he wants to, I think he should go for it, and there's a chance. Some of this stuff is done behind the scenes. We don't get tryouts and guys getting cut. The ego doesn't quite work that way. I'll be really curious to see if we end up seeing Mitchell, and if he talks about it towards the end of the year. I don't think this is something that's totally reasonable to ask in media day. I kind of think this is more of a March question, or when the leaks start coming out. Maybe I'll ask him at media day, or someone could, if I don't for whatever reason, about, hey, did you think about this summer? Is Team USA in your plans at all in the future? I think that's actually pretty valid. I'm curious to see if he does it. I think there's a chance, but it's also possible he could be the third place shooting guard. And I think at the best, he's going to be coming off the bench behind Devin Booker. Darius Garland also faces a really tough position battle if you look ahead as far as Team USA goes. I think Steph Curry is probably going to play for Steve Kerr in Paris. I know Curry's older, maybe he gets hurt, and this rules him out of it. Again, all this is really health-centric. But Curry getting to play in a last Olympics and playing for Steve Kerr just feels like something that's going to happen. So, okay. Steph Curry, You are starting point guard for Team USA in Paris. Congratulations. Welcome to the team. You have Jalen Brunson in play. He's on the team this summer. Tyrese Halliburton is playing at the World Cup this summer and is in play and feels like a very Steve Curry kind of player to me. A little bit bigger, maybe a little more versatile. You could play him in 2-guard sets as well if you needed to. Do they look at Trae Young? Do they look at Drew Holiday and bring him again after he came for the last Olympics? I know he's a little bit older now, but okay, do they go for an old steady hand who can give you all this defensive versatility in Drew Holiday as opposed to Garland, who doesn't give you that defensive versatility? What about John Morant? I don't know if he's like, this FIBA World Cup, my co-host at the Just Basketball show, Brandon Clean, made this point, and I think it's great. This would have been the summer for Ja to play for Team USA at the World Cup. Like, Anthony Edwards is getting like a starring primetime role for Team USA at this World Cup. He feels like the guy in that team to me. That probably should have been Ja's role, but like, there's all this stuff happening with him. He's suspended to start the year. Like, does he just not factor into this? I think that's very up in the air at this point. For Garland, it's just unfortunate that there's a very crowded path here. I will say, I think if he could get there, I think if there's a world where Darius Garland could sneak in some way, I think that would be really great for him to get there. He was on the select team a couple years ago. He raved about that experience, and kind of Darius Garland doesn't like, when he talks, he doesn't go out of his way to kind of fully elaborate, I think, how he's feeling, which is his right. But you got the sense that this meant a lot to him and that he learned a lot from, and he talked about playing for Pop and working with Eric Spoelstra and playing against Dame in practice. Like, this is an environment that makes you better. I think for Garland, that he is going to be like, he's pre-prime, I think you could look at and say. Right now, he's 23. He won't be 24 until January, so he'll be 24 at these Olympics. He could maybe make one after this. That's very possible as well, to get there like at age 28. Drew did something similar to that. But if he could get there next summer or 2026 World Cup, something like that, I think it would be a really big deal for his career. I think this is the iron sharpens iron thing, and I think this is something that could really help make Garland even better. Kyrie, when he was with the Cavs, talked about this. He's playing with Kobe, scrimmaging against him. It makes you better. I think this is something that Garland hopefully would aspire to. I think this is something that could be a really, really big deal for him if it could come to fruition. I think, honestly, if I were to pick between him and Mitchell, of who I think it would benefit them more to go, it's Darius Garland. But that might just be me. Evan Mobley, interesting to me, first off, that he didn't participate in the select team this summer. I thought he was a prime candidate to be on that team. I don't know why he didn't. Chet Holmgren kind of had the spot I thought like Mobley might get. Like, I don't know if like he just isn't interested. I don't know if like they didn't come calling, whatever it is. He wasn't on the select team. Okay. His immediate future also could just depend on if Joel Embiid plays for Team USA next summer and beyond. Like, if Joel Embiid goes, he's starting at center. I think Jaren Jackson, based on how he's playing and stuff, is going to get there. You have Paolo Banchero, who's at this FIBA World Cup this summer. Which again, like another guy that like he just was a rookie, and I would love to know what Mobley's outlook on USA basketball is, if I'm being entirely honest, but I don't know. I don't think anyone in the media necessarily knows. Mobley is someone that like could have a path blocked just based on what centers they take and all that stuff. He did play for Team USA as an amateur. He was at the 2018 Under-17 World Cup. That was in Argentina. They won the gold medal. He averaged 9.3 points, 5.6 assists, 5.6 rebounds, and 2.6 assists. He was on the 2019 FIBA World Under-19 World Cup team in Greece, but he was hurt, and he only played 7 minutes due to back spasms. So that was, a bummer for him. Team USA still won the gold medal despite Mobley not playing. And like, again, like at the amateur level, oftentimes the USA team is just stacked. Like, okay, like that happens. It can just be that way. I mean, Jalen Green was on that team. Scotty Barnes was on that team. Like, this was a team that had Cade Cunningham on it. Halliburton was on that team. Suggs was on that team. Carey Lewis Jr. Zion, I think was. Yeah, Zaire Williams was on that team. Excuse me. Like, you had a really like a team full of like dudes, Some you don't. Some that are a little bit older, but like that was a pristine group of guys. Like a lot of guys that went on to be very high draft picks, guys that contended or won Rookie of the Year. Tyrese Halliburton obviously has now gotten to the main part of it. That team was, it's coached by different people. It's not run by the same people. Things change. Like there's guys that just haven't popped coming off of that, obviously. But Mobley is someone that has played for Team USA before. Does he want to do it again in the future is an open question. I think if I were going to pick who is most likely to make the team in 2024, today I would say Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley in that order. And if I were to say who I think it would mean the most for, I would go Garland, Mobley, and Mitchell. I think in terms of furthering their careers. I don't want to speak to their personal meaning, like how much it would mean to them as humans, but I think in terms of how it could accelerate their careers based on the stage they're at, it's Garland and then Mobley and then Mitchell. All right, up next, who to root for? If you're not, maybe Team USA is the easy answer, but I'll give you some other options if you're looking for some FIBA World Cup rooting interest. Talk about that up next. All right, last segment here. Okay, Team USA, obvious choice. There's some American bias here. If I have a little Norwegian flag that I could grab and wave, but they suck at basketball, unfortunately for me, as someone who loves Norway. But if I had a little mini American flag, I'd be waving that right now because I'm an American. It'd be cool to see Team USA too. Well, if you're an American, you could just root for Team USA and be cool with that part of your patriotism, I guess. There's tons of cool basketball things to consider with this team as well. I mean, the first game, Paolo Banchero's out here playing the 5, something he hasn't totally done in the NBA. He hasn't done it with Orlando. They have other centers, and Steve Kerr's just okay, Paolo Banchero, you are a center. That in itself is interesting. You have a group with lots to prove with Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton and maybe Brunson fighting for a roster spot and Jaren Jackson Jr. maybe cementing himself at center. Does he push Bam or maybe Bam if Embiid doesn't come into the fold, whatever that looks like. Brandon Ingram had some interesting quotes where he seemed kind of unhappy with things after one game, and it's okay, is Cam Johnson gonna be a better international player than him? Are they just gonna maybe start Paolo, even though Paolo's kind of the backup center because Walker Kessler and Bobby Portis said, again, this is no shade at them, but it's kind of interesting to me. I think Evan Mobley could have at least been the backup center on this team over Walker Kessler or Bobby Portis. It's just an open. Again, this is just happening. This is flowing out in real time, and now I'm just wondering these things. So again, Team USA, there's a lot of intrigue there. Again, this is the Ant breakout. I think we're heading towards the Anthony Edwards breakout season. This could be the start of that. The Paolo Banchero stuff, he looks awesome. I'm so fascinated by this Team USA team. If you're still a Lauri Markkanen head, and later this week we'll talk about the Donovan Mitchell trade 1 year later. If you're still a Lauri Markkanen believer, okay, you have Finland. You could get behind Jordan Clarkson, Lululemon ambassador Jordan Clarkson. I don't think that team is going to be around for a long time, but I think they're going to be around for a good time. This tournament, again, isn't Asia. It's been really cool get to see the crowds for these Asian teams specifically, what they're drawing, the environment is creating. You could just vibe with Clarkson, which is never a bad idea in my mind. If you want to get behind Luka and Slovenia, you could do that as well. There's obviously a big Slovenian-Cleveland connection there. If you look ahead to the schedule next season, and assuming he plays, Luka playing in Cleveland is an event. It is always crazy. The crowd is extra hyped for those games. It's that game and Giannis with the Greek aspect. It's really, really cool to see. So if you want to just ride on the Slovenia part of it, go ahead and do it. Here's the thing that I will just say in defense of anyone who's I'm not going to watch this. I don't have time. The tournament hours of this are really tough, which is obviously for me and many of the listeners and viewers out there, it's a very Western problem to consider. If you're listening to this on Monday, August 28th, Team USA plays at 8:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Monday against Greece. No Giannis. Thanasis, though. Thanasis is on that team, which is, elite teammate, podcaster Thanasis. For me, I'll be going to the office at that point for my day job. A lot of people will. If you're on the West Coast, you might still be asleep. 5:40 a.m., you're either getting up to go work out or going to run, or you're still sleeping in, you're taking the dog out, whatever it is, like you might not be awake. That's reasonable. Or maybe you work different hours and this is your chance to sleep. I get if you don't want to watch this. It's tough. It's like the Women's World Cup just happened. That happened in a similar area of the world in terms of the hours being tough. Like, it was really hard at times to, like, we got lucky in America that sometimes they scheduled the USA games at 9 p.m. to watch them. And then when at a certain point we got crappy hours and you had to wake up at like 3 a.m. So, like, you know what, tough stuff. Like, it's cool to see events in other parts of the world, even if, like, for us it's inconvenient. I would rather, get to watch Team USA play at like 7:30. That would be cool. I could build a night around that. That would be awesome. For this case, doesn't happen though. Next one in Qatar, so again, it'll be similar to the World Cup, the Men's World Cup we just watched for that. Thankfully, they're not going to have to move it to a different part of the year to accommodate the weather, though, which is nice. But I think it'll be worth catching highlights of some of these games and looking at what's happening. It is such a cool feel, I think, to embrace how different this is and the different style of play and what it looks like, and wrap your arms around it as much as you can if you're in love with basketball. If you're just a Cavs fan, that's fine. You don't, like, whatever. But if you're kind of like interested in the basketball side of this and into what the sport is and where it's going, wrap your arms around this, I think, as much as you can. It's worth at least catching the highlights. I mean, France was like beat USA at the last World Cup. They just lost to Latvia without Kristaps Porzingis. After they lost to Canada by like 30, they're out. And now like Nick Batum is like really mad. And they're facing like their current generation's like mortality at the Paris Olympics next summer. Like, there is so much here if you want to dive into it that I recommend it. Team USA at the very least, it's worth processing these NBA guys. And if you're thinking about this from a Cavs perspective, just watch these games, watch some of the highlights at least, and think about how Garland and Mitchell and Mobley would stack up, in some of these instances. I think that is at least an interesting thought exercise if you're interested. But thanks again for tuning in. This has been the Locked On Cavs episode for Monday, August 28th. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day. Every day is back later this week. Evan and I are going to do a 2-part Donovan Mitchell trade retrospective. It's been a year. We'll talk about how we feel about the trade a year later, how the check-in on the guys the Cavs gave up, and if you do it again. The answer is yes, I think, but we'll talk all about that later this week, and next week we'll start getting into some more big picture season preview stuff as we get past Labor Day. Until our next episode, I'm Chris Manning. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for producing. Enjoy the hoops. Enjoy the FIBA. Talk to y'all later this week.